Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to PSGL here for round number 4 of the F6 PlayStation tier. My name is, of course, Ivor Brim. I'm going to be taking you through the action as your lead common. Joined alongside with me, he is back once again. He's the man, the myth, the legend. There is RDR Quinn. Quinn, how are you doing tonight, bud?
Yeah, I'm doing really good actually. I'm excited for this race here in Qatar at the Lusail circuit, of course. Very fast and flowing circuit, so I'd expect the qualifying to be fairly close between the whole grid.
Yep, absolutely. Could not agree more. Before we get jumping into anything though, massive shout out to our sponsors, GT Omega. Of course, when you go on the GT Omega site, make sure you use code PSGL at the checkout there. Apologies for that. Yep, PSGL code at the checkout for a cheeky little discount. And of course, the drivers are now heading out on track. And honestly, given how difficult this track can be in terms of track limits, as well as just generally getting a nice little feel and a rhythm for the track, it's going to push the limits on these guys quite to the limit. And of course, we're going to be seeing qualifying times, I predict, in the low 1 minute 20s. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I mean, that's where I kind of predict things at the moment.
Yeah, I could definitely see it being, well, the pole time being a low 20 to mid 20. I could definitely see that. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see how these guys fare around this circuit. I've done a race round here yesterday, and it is horrible on fuel. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys handle that.
Yeah, I'm just bumping up the volumes a sec. It seemed a bit light on my end, but yeah. So on board with Aguado, who is the first man out on track. And of course, Aguado, last time out, if you guys missed round number 3, of course, we're going to tell you what happened in it. If you bear with me, of course, at Silverstone, we saw Alex Marciano take victory ahead of Fleddy, and what was a photo finish, but we'll come back on that as Aguado's actually going to start a flying lap, so we'll stay on board with Aguado, running down in towards turn number 1 of the 5.3 kilometer circuit. Nice corner there from Aguado, now entering turn number 2, and of course the right-hander of turn 3. Foot to the floor as you head down towards turn number 4, trying to maximize it as possible as you go through 4 and 5, making sure you do not run wide as you head to the hairpin of turn number 6 in the middle sector. Now coming up to turn number 7, it's almost a never-ending right-hander, and it immediately cuts into a sharp left, where we could be seeing some invalidations there as we go through turn 9 now into turn number 10. All about the exit here as you try to get on the throttle as early as possible to maximize your running towards turn number 12. Just missed the middle sector split, but coming through the final few corners, it's turn number 15 here, the left-hander, where we have seen many drivers get very varied runs out of that corner. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to get the best run out of there. But for the final corner to the line, the ERS has been used up, and it's going to be a 1 minute 21 flat from Aguado, opening banker.
Yeah, it's a very solid lap there from Aguado, and Fleddy immediately goes near enough 2 tenths faster. So yeah, some solid bankers coming through at the moment. We've got Peter Vol coming in, only 3 tenths or 2.5 tenths slower than Aguado. Then we have a Ferrari, which is Compura, coming through, and that's a 21.3. Believe that was, not sure who's there behind him. That must have been Lifebelt, but King goes about 400ths faster than Fleddy.
Yeah, as I'm on board with Lifeboat's teammate as he just exceeds the track limits. ET8 Chris now coming back into the pits. Final sector lap invalidated, not what he wants on his opening lap. Lifeboat, as you mentioned, just starting a lap. We got Stretch on a invalid run. He's about to start up a new lap. We have a Mercedes coming to the line of Miguel, pops himself up into P3 for the time being. And of course, well, we got the first laps coming in. Now, of course, I'm going to take you through of what happened at Silverstone for round number 3. So, as mentioned, Alex Marciano was able to get the victory by literally a whisker. There was not much in it in terms of him and Fleddy, and of course, Luke and Nick as well. For that matter, there was a total of 900ths of a second between those three as they crossed the line, but Luke and Nick, with that 3-second time penalty at the end, drops easily to P3 out of those three. But the gap between Fleddy and Alex at the end was only 36 thousandths of a second, which is incredibly tight. So if you guys didn't see what happened last week, I highly recommend watching that because it was a photo finish. Miguel came in P4 with Stretch in P5. Soapbox was P6. Aguado came home originally in P4, but a 5-second penalty for an incident applied from the steward. He ends up finishing in P7. Aiden in P8. Tactician in P9, and of course King got the final point paying position. Now I know what you're thinking, how does that set things up in the driver's standings? And it does look like this. Alex Marciano leads the way on 24 points, 2 points ahead of Aguado, who is in P2, and King in P3, who are both level on points on 22 points apiece. 17 points for the man in 4th place, which is Miguel at the moment, the Mercedes driver. Fleddy, with a good podium last time out, gets himself up into P5 in the championship. He's on 13.5 points. 10 points apiece for the Alfa Romeo of Yanel, and of course Luke and Nick with that fantastic podium last time out. 6.5 points for Tactician in P8, and then we have a list of drivers all on the same points, which is 6 points to be fair. They're all on the same points, and that is going to be Owen Moore, Lifeboat, Aiden, and I believe Stretch. Yep, 4 drivers all on 6 points, and we got 2 drivers on 5 points. That is of course Daniel in the Mercedes and Soapbox, the reserve driver. Then of course we got ET8 Chris on 4 points in 15th place, Jerome on 3 points in 16th, and NLR Liam in the Aston Martin, who is on 2.5 points. And that is all those drivers that have managed to accumulate points in the championship so far. And in terms of the constructors, it is Haas who lead the way on 30 points with 22 points for 3 different teams. That is right, 3 different teams all tied on points as Aguado gets us underway for another lap, so we'll stay on board with Aguado. And he is a part of the team which is one of those 3 teams with 22 points. Of course, Williams in 2nd place, Alpine in 3rd, Mercedes in 4th, all sat on identical points. Of course, 16.5 points for the Alfa Romeo team, 13.5 points for the Red Bull team, 10 points for the Alfa Tauris, 6 points for the McLarens, 5 points for the Ferraris, and the Aston Martins on 2.5 points, coming in last in the constructors as it currently stands. But going into tonight, a lot of close battles in the drivers and constructors. It's going to be very intriguing to see who's going to be coming out on top of this, and right now we're currently on board with Aguado.
Yeah, I was just watching Janel's lap, and it was looking quite solid until he invalidated through the first of the triple right-handers. But gonna hop over to Aguado now. Didn't quite catch any of the sector splits, but he's coming through the penultimate. Well, he's just gone through the penultimate corner, then into the final corner, late apex corner. Get the power down as early as you can. Does run out of deployment. Will it be an improvement for Aguado? It might be close. It is. It's only a slight improvement though, so still P4 for him.
Yeah, marginal improvements there for Aguado. Lifeboat out there on a lap, obviously 26.4 first sector. He's trying to get a lap on the board. He's still yet to get one. Of course, we have Stretch, who's just started a lap. We got Burrell in the McLaren. He's out there in the middle sector, I think just ahead of Lifeboat on track. So we'll cut back to these two towards the end. Jerome out there on the set, and medium. Soapbox out there on a lap as well. So we'll flip back on board with Burrell as he is coming to the, through the final sector now. He does have Lifeboat in behind him, so that could potentially help Lifeboat with a little bit of slipstream down to the finish line.
Yeah, definitely could. And coming through that penultimate corner, he did slide a little bit, so scrubbed a little bit of speed off him. And it's a 21.7 for Burrell, and Lifeboat puts himself up into P3.
Yep, good
so
lap
very
there.
solid lap.
Yep. As Aldo Strippo there with a 20.7 and a late call to come into the pits from PGS Stretch. Very late call to come into the pits, to be fair. Hopefully we don't be seeing that kind of late dart into the pits in the race, because that can really catch a driver out, as the final corner is quite a prudent overtaking opportunity.
Yeah, definitely is. You've got to have a good run out onto the DRS zone. Of course, there is only one DRS zone on this track, so it's very important that you get the exit of the last corner absolutely perfect, as Jerome puts himself in P2. Only, I think that's 18 thousandths of a second faster than King. So it's a checkerboard effect between Alpines and Red Bulls at the moment for the first four positions.
Yeah, both constructor teams are having a great qualifying session so far. I'm currently on board with Owen Moore as he comes to the line. What's this going to be for the Scuderia? And it's a 20.4. And he's absolutely put the mantle down. Says, come on lads, let's have some.
Yeah, it's very, very solid lap. On the low, I hope that nobody beats it, because my prediction was a 20.4.
I said low 20s, so
I mean, it's just about into the 20.4, so I'll take it. But yeah, everyone, I'm not sure how long. I think there's about just under 6 minutes left of this session, so it's gonna be interesting to see how people play these last 6 minutes, the last third of the session.
yeah, trying to jump on board with a driver who is on a fast lap. I believe King's on a cool down lap. Obviously Owen Moore is as well. I'll just triple back into the pits and Jerome.
I think Yanil is on a fast lap at the moment.
Yes, we'll jump on board with the Alfa Romeo driver, and we'll see how he gets on. Of course, Yanil did get a podium in, I believe it was Bahrain at round 2. It didn't go to plan for him at Silverstone last time out, and of course at DNF at Brazil. He's going to be looking to get some good points here at round number 4, so it's going to be interesting to see how Yanil is going to get on coming through the final sector now. The Alfa Romeo is going to be hoping to be well up there in terms of the times, but can he break Owen Moore's time? We're going to find out. To the line goes Yanil, and it's going to be a 20.8, good enough for P5, splitting the Red Bulls.
It's exactly the same time as Jerome. Of course, because Jerome had set that time first, he's ahead, so very, very rare occurrence there of two people setting the exact same time.
Yeah, absolutely, as we got Fleddy coming for the final corner. Of course, Fleddy was up on his middle sector time by almost 2 tenths of a second, so it could be enough to get him on the front row. Can he gain any more time for the final sector? I think that was potentially a small lift-off as he crossed the line.
Yeah, I think it was, but I don't think it would have been enough to put him into pole position, but he's got... That may have been his final run, because he crossed the line with about 4 minutes left. It would take him, pushing like this, it would take him about 1.5 minutes, so he may just have enough time to get out, but it's going to be pretty much instant. Get new tyres on and go out, so it's going to be tight for Fleddy at the moment. We've still got everyone else in the pits, but Burrell is the first person out on a
Aguado to the line, sorry, to cut in as he's improved by 2.5 times up into P5 goes Aguado.
Yeah, very good time there from Aguado. Do have a Mercedes, I think that is Soapbox. He's just coming to the last corner now. And he is just running out of deployment now. But it is enough to put him up into P8. Now we have... Burrell. Yeah, Burrell's the first person, but we've got 2 AlphaTauris coming out of the pits, so might be a little bit of traffic for Burrell in the McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely, and I was just about to point it out. I think Fleddy's actually timed his lap to perfection, because obviously we've got about two minutes to go in the session, and he is in the pits right now. He's been in the pits for a good 30 seconds, so he should be able to get back out and get another run in.
Yeah, he will have to get out pretty soon, as we do have an Alfa Romeo and an Aston Martin coming out, and I believe there is just one car left in the pits that isn't going out. And I think that may be Fleddy. Yeah, Fleddy's the only person. Oh, he's just going out for his lap now.
Yeah, so Fleddy, 1 minute 50 to go in the session, coming out of the pits. Aguado, unfortunately, not going to be doing anything further in this session. We are on board with the McLaren, almost 5 tenths up, almost half a second up on his middle sector split. Burrell looking for big improvements here to get himself well up the order, but he's just taken too much inside curb, loses the car, and around goes the McLaren.
Yeah, he was carrying way too much speed through the penultimate corner there. It's just not a corner that he can do flat. He tried it with a downshift and it just didn't work out. With that improvement through the Sector 2 split, it would have only potentially moved him up into P14. Well, we do have
his teammates on the lap right now, obviously furthest along on his lap, and I believe the next man behind him is Aldo Stripple. So we'll be jumping straight on board with Aldo momentarily as soon as Aiden crosses the line.
What is... I'm just watching Aldo, and I think there's a connection issue on his part, because his car is all over the place.
We'll have to jump on board the line and have a little peek in a minute, but Aiden to the line, currently P14, improves up into the top 10, P9.
Yeah, very good lap there from Aiden. I'm just looking. Aldo puts himself 2 thousandths of a second behind Owen Moore. I believe Jerome's just started his lap. Fleddy has started his lap with about 6 seconds left.
King to the line, he's going to be the first one to see the checkered flag. King, what's this going to be for him? He's currently P4 and he improves up into P3, finds a bit of time in the final sector. Stretch crossing the line, he's up into P3, a good lap there from Stretch. I believe we've got a Ferrari coming to the line, and actually no, that's Owen Moore into the pits. So an Alpha Tauri of Lifeboat, next man to cross the line. He's marginally down in his middle sector split, but can he find time in this final sector? We're about to find out. Lifeboat, and no, he's absolutely sent it into the wall.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about people doing that. As Tactician, yeah, it's unfortunate for Tactician. It would have been a marginal improvement on his time. And we have Miguel, who's getting a slipstream from Peter Vol, moves up P9, Miguel into P5. And we have Yanil coming to the line. Will he find himself up the order? He does, into P4. Now we have Fleddy as well. Will it be an improvement?
It is an improvement, but it's not enough to get him onto the front row. So I think, there we go, that's the end of qualifying. Owen Moore with I believe this is his first pole position of the season.
Yeah, it is. We've got a little bit of a mixed up grid here with Aguado retiring from the session early once again, and he's down in P8. King in P6 as well. So it might not be as easy as they thought it would be for these guys, because it's a very, very difficult track to overtake. The only overtaking zones really is out of the final corner if you get a good run, down the pit straight and into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, like in terms of like just being able to get a run on someone, like there's plenty of corners where you can just take a tidy line and get a run on someone. But we'll run you through the order. Is of course Owen Moore, who takes his first pole position of the season. The Irishman going to be starting from the front, and Aldo Strip pole going to be alongside him on the front row. Then of course we got Stretch and Yanel on the second row. Fifth we got Fleddy and King in sixth. Miguel in seventh, Aguado in eighth, Jerome in ninth, and Peter Vol rounding out the top 10. Only just over 4/10 of a second separating the top 10. Then of course we got Soapbox 11th, Aiden 12th, Lifeboat 13th, 14th is Caparo, 15th is ET8 Chris, Tactician in 16th, and Borrell in 17th place, and 1.2 seconds separating the entire field here in qualifying.
I mean, if you take one of my other predictions from before the race started, the whole grid was going to be separated by about 6 or 7 tenths. It was, first to 16th was 8 tenths. So,
well, I'd just like to remind that first to third was only 3 thousandths of a second. That's how close it was at the end.
That's crazy. The top 5 separated by under a tenth as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go one better than Silverstone and have the top 5 separated by a tenth come to the finish line.
Oh, one can only hope. But as we wait right now, I mean, looking at what's called the qualifying times that was set at the end. I mean, Stretch, that was a last lap effort, and he didn't have a time on the board until he set that final lap, and it put him up in P3. So maybe in terms of a Stretch's race, it's not so much the pace he has to worry about. Maybe it's just the track limits as we go to those 5 red lights. Lights out, and we are underway here in Qatar. Owen Moore off the line gets a very decent start and pulls clear. Stretch is trying to go around the outside of Aldo into turn 1.
So Aldo gets a good run and is defending very nicely against Stretch and keeps P2 there. Have some movement. Yano finds himself up into P4. He's had a great first lap so far. And we've got Peter Vol right on the back of Fleddy as well. So, so far, all is looking nice and clean. But we've still got 28 and a half laps to go.
Scrapping it out side by side as I'm on board with Aiden, getting a nice view of this. Aiden's kind of boxed in. He had the run to overtake one of them, but didn't have the room. Jerome and Miguel still side by side. Aiden looking for a switchback on the pair of them. Can he get it done? No, he can't. This is brilliant stuff in the midfield already. And of course, we've got Fleddy on the back of Aguado. They're no strangers to each other in terms of battling. Obviously, Aguado, a couple of podiums to his name this season. And of course, Fleddy, he was up there in Brazil, but had a horrible race in the end. Little bit of contact between him and Alex, and of course Silverstone, he managed to get that podium that he's been longing for. And yeah, the way things are going right now, Owen Moore still leads the way as King gets through on Yanel down the inside in towards turn number 1. Can Yanel hold it around the outside? And no, he's going to have to concede that position.
Very close to contact there between the two drivers. And just looking back to Soapbox, he was getting very close to the back of Lifeboat as that's Campura making a dive down the inside of Aiden. Very brave move there from Campura. And yeah, very, very nice move there.
Well, looking at the position changes as we're on lap number 2, King up 2 places, Janel down 1, Aguado up 2 places, Fleddy losing out on 2 places, Peter Vol up 2 places, obviously Miguel down 3 places, Capara up 3 places, Soapbox down 3 places, Tactician up 1, and Chris down 1. So that is the changes from the grid here on lap 2. Currently on board with Aguado, getting close to the back of Yano. So we're going to be seeing if any possibility down in towards turn number 1 for the Williams car. Of course, up ahead you got King looking at the back of Stretch as well. That could be another potential opportunity. Camparo getting close to the back of Miguel for P10. And Chris gets a 5-second speeding penalty, comes into the pits and retires.
Yeah, we don't like seeing that. We don't like seeing people going into the pits and retiring, especially this early, but it's going to happen. People are going to get fed up, of course. Just before that, he did get a 3-second penalty, so thought his race was over, but it's never over. Never over, especially at a track like this. More people can get penalties, but yeah, I just don't like seeing people retire in the pit lane.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it's never nice to see them things. But of course, maybe it was damage related. Maybe you got a bit of rear wing damage, and of course, in those situations, then it's understandable to come in and retire if you get a bit of rear wing damage. But I mean, if you can still keep going, I would say keep going, because you never know if a safety car can bring you back in late into the race if you have an early instance.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the tyre selections from everyone, and it's as expected. Everyone was on the hard tyres, started on the hards. No one opted in for a medium stint.
Oh, here comes King as well. Aldo getting swamped down the straight by both Stretch and his teammate. So Aldo concedes a place to both BGS Stretch and JR King. So the Alpines align the steering in 3rd and 4th, but now is King ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see if Stretch can keep up with Owen Moore, because I think Aldo was outside of the DRS range, so that's why he got absolutely swamped. But looking at Stretch, he has just set a purple sector 1, so he is marginally faster than Owen Moore at the moment, but the gap is just sitting around 9.5 tenths between the two. It's just jumped up to over a second, so it's going to be hard, and PGS Stretch is really using his ERS, whereas Owen Moore is sitting at about 80%, so yeah, PGS Stretch really pushing to try and catch up to Owen Moore.
Yeah, I mean, Stretch needs to use a bit of battery just to make sure that he stays within that 1 second. He doesn't want to overcommit to trying to close up too much, because then it could leave him vulnerable later in the stint to King and Aldo and even Yanel and Aguado. Because remember, it is a DRS train all the way down to, I mean, I would say Aiden, but I think Aiden will get DRS. In fact, no, maybe not. Actually, no, he does get it, and Soapbox is through up into P13. But yeah, I mean, it was a DRS train from 1st all the way down to 16th, so you don't want to be overcommitting on your ERS now. Yano looking at Aldo strip for P4, getting close to the back of the Alpine, but not going for a move.
Yeah, and just going back to something you said about PGS Stretch, I think when you're in,
Yano gets a fantastic run out of turn. Believe it's turn 6. Out of turn 6, gets a fantastic run on Aldo and gets through up into P4. Sorry to cut you off. Continue on.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh, Jan, I'm cutting myself off here. Yano has a little bit of a moment there on the exit, and Aldo is right on his gearbox now. But yeah, like I was saying, when you were saying about like you were saying about Stretch and potentially having some track limits issues, you're going to have a different mindset from qualifying to race. You're going to be pushing and risking everything in qualifying to get as far up the grid as you can, but in a race you're going to be a little bit more cautious. But Stretch definitely showing his race
Guado.
pace here. That's a
Free wide turn one.
Guado. Oh
Oh, contact.
no! That's got to be on Aldo.
So you're gonna have to look at that back, and I'm sure that'll be one thing that may be looked at by the stewards at the end of the race. But that is not what you want to see there. Contact between Aldo Yano, and I think Aguado potentially might have got away with that without any damage on his car. But we'll have to wait and see. He's 1.5 off the back of King ahead of him. He is closing in, so I think he has managed to get away with it. So. Yeah, I mean, free wide turn one, you have to give each other space, and unfortunately, it just wasn't enough space this time around.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for those two, but the race goes on, and going back to Stretch, he has closed this gap right down to the back of Owen Moore. Owen Moore has just pulled away, and that's wide, and Owen Moore picks up a penalty. This early on in the race, it can easily compound up.
Sorry to jump in there. I mean, Aguado used up his entire battery almost to close up that, what's called it? I think it was like 1.6 second gap to King, so he could get DRS, and that's left Fleddy hung and dry, being overtaken now by Peter Vole because he hasn't used all of his battery to keep with Aguado.
Yeah, it's a long game here. It's definitely a long game. Personally, your battery just drains even from not using it. You can lose up to 20-30% of your battery just from not using it during a stint. So you've got to be really selective on when you use it and when you, charge it back up. And just looking at Aguado, he's really closed up to this front pack, and yeah, 2 tenths behind King now. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, and one thing I also want to point out as well, Aldo came into the pits retired from the session, so he is not happy with that incident in turn 1.
Yeah, still on board with Aguado as Campura gets a 3-second time penalty. He is sticking with that 2 tenths gap, and he might get a good run on these guys unless it kind of looks like the 3 ahead, or at least the 3 ahead of Aguado, are running a more straight line speed setup, and Aguado's going for maybe a more downforce, because even with King ahead of him wasn't using any ERS down the main straight, and he was still pulling away. So yeah, I can definitely see King running more of a straight line speed setup, and Aguado running more of a downforce. So
can I just say, Owen Moore, he's just been overtaken for the race lead. He's sat on 95% battery. He's not using anything at the moment. Like, this is not the true pace of Owen Moore here. He's got a fair few tenths in him, I think.
Oh, and he runs wide on the exit there. But yeah, he's not using his ERS, as you rightly said. So yeah, he's just hiding his pace a little bit. Of course, these guys here will not know what ERS he is on. Everyone around him is on about 30-40%, so more definitely playing a long game here. And maybe he's going to use some of it down here, down the pit straight. Does he opt to use it? No, he doesn't. He's just going to get past him on pure pace with the DRS, side by side. He does use it a little bit there just to get the move confirmed. Back into P1 goes Owen Moore. Oh, a little bit of a rear end switch there.
Lost it.
Oh.
Safety car, lap 9. Stretch losing it on the exit curb through turn 1. Loses the car and into the wall. The front right wheel pops off the Haas, and it is game over for Stretch. An absolute shame. Stretch is having a fantastic race, and at the front as well.
Yeah, definitely was having a fantastic race, but this safety car just, well, for Aguado and King, and as well, everyone on the grid is just gonna, their ERS is gonna be exactly the same level as Owen Moore. So the advantage that he had on everyone is just taken away from him now.
Yeah, I mean, what's called the one thing I was going to say with regards like the battery usage. So Aiden was pretty high on his battery, and so was Lifeboat as well. Like they were the two closest to Owen Moore in terms of battery life. So, and you look at the amount of cars in between Lifeboat and Aiden to where Owen Moore is. Like by the time they get Owen Moore, they're going to be using pretty much their entire battery deployment.
No, Owen Moore decides to pit. Everyone is deciding to pit now. We're going to see a two-stop here.
Well, this is definitely thrown a absolute spanner in the works. Tactician stays out.
Tactician, the only person to stay out, not wanting to risk the double stack. Everyone's going to go to a set of mediums and most likely either go to another set of a set of softs or another set of mediums to end it off. I reckon it's going to be a double medium from here. But it will be Tactician who leads off this restart. And maybe he's just banking on doing a one-stop. And it could be a very good but bold strategy call here from Tactician.
Well, normally, if I remember correctly, the pit stop from the hards to the mediums is around lap 16, I want to say. So we're not a million miles away from that. Of course, as you mentioned, with everyone jumping on the mediums, they might possibly have to make a second stop. But even if they don't make a second stop, their tyres are going to be so worn at the end that Tactician should have enough grip on those tyres to be able to come through, maybe pick up some late positions. I'm not sure if he'll have the pace early on once the safety car comes in to keep with these guys, and yeah, he's going to have a lot of work to do when he gets onto the fresh mediums. But it's an interesting strategy. We're going to see if it pays out for Tactician. And one thing that we do know is that he's called Tactician for a reason. Maybe he knows something that we don't.
Yeah, maybe he does, but we just gotta see how this plays out. So the safety car, I reckon, will be coming in at the end of this next lap. So we're going to get Tactician decides to come in. It's a late call from Tactician. He didn't want to risk the double stack with Yanel, and now he's going to find himself at the back of the grid.
I mean, so here's my thought process on it. So obviously by double stacking, he is going to give up a little bit of time. In terms of the drivers that he was close to, I mean, he is going to he's going to give up a position to Aiden in the soapbox, because obviously Boral also double stacked with Aiden as well. So effectively, he's lost an extra position by by waiting a lap to come into the pits, but he will have one lap fresher tyres to potentially get to the end of the race.
Well, it's going to be an interesting call to see if they can actually get to the end of the race, because when we start up, it's going to be, I believe, about 17, 18 laps on these mediums, which I don't know how possible that is.
Well,
I think when I've looked before, they really start to drop off at about 13, 14 laps. So it's about how well you can nurse them.
Yeah, so I think if you start on the mediums, like the normal pit window would be around lap 13ish, there or thereabouts. I mean, the mediums start to drop off after around 8-9 laps, I think, and then obviously you're going to be starting to think about the pit stop around lap 10, 11, 12 13. But it's going to be interesting because we're asking these drivers to go an extra 10 laps on these tyres. Safety car is going to be coming in this lap. Looking at the chat, we have support for King in the chat. There was support early on for Miguel and obviously for Aldo. Unfortunately, Aldo out of this race now, but I'm sure he would absolutely appreciate the support that he had in the chat. And of course, support for Soapbox as well. So a lot of different drivers getting some support here as we wait for Owen Moore to get us underway and get this race going back under green flag conditions. We're waiting to see when that Ferrari is going to bolt, as I think there's been absolute carnage in the background there. Jerome losing the car perhaps, and a lot of changing positions going on as we're back racing once again.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but it was utter chaos. Tactician actually gets a good run. Gets a really good run, and I'm not sure what happened to Kambura there.
He just pulled off.
Maybe he's got some damage.
Yeah, potentially. We got a Stretch in the chat saying he wants to cry. Honestly, it was heartbreaking. That curve can be lethal, Stretch, but he did put in a fantastic showing, even though it just didn't go your way tonight. But I'm sure next week you'll be back bigger, better, and stronger.
Yeah, it does. It does hurt when you have an incident like that happen, but you just gotta put that to the back of your mind and move on to the next race. And I'm just looking at Kambura, and he's definitely got wing damage. Looking at the front of his car, he's hasn't got the front right end plate of his wing, so that's where he's losing all of his downforce. And of course, with this being a clockwise circuit, most of the corners are going to be right-handers, so it's not what you want. Really not what you want here.
Yep, 16 corners. I believe it's 10 to the right and 6 to the left as King gets through up into P1. So King has made the move and he's into the lead of this race. We got Fleddy getting through on Peter Vol there for P4. So the Red Bull trying to make some moves, get himself back up towards the podium positions, and Camparo has retired from the session. He is possibly going to be quite upset with picking up wing damage, but I think just judging on what was happening towards the back of the field on that safety car restart, but essentially the reason that Jerome went around could be also a contributing factor to why Camparo ended up with wing damage.
Yeah, it could definitely be the reason why. And I'm just looking at the top 10, and there's 9, well, I think, yeah, there's 9 different teams in the top 10 at the moment, I believe, if I'm doing this all correct. I think, yeah, there's 9 different teams in the top 10, with Mercedes being the only team with 2 drivers there. So that's going to be interesting for the Constructors' Championship. And just on board with Owen Moore, he's not really gaining much, if anything, on King at the moment. DRS is now back enabled. That may be why, because no DRS, but Aguado really getting onto the back of Owen Moore now, as he did run wide of the exit of turn 2.
Yeah, the thing is,
compromising a little bit.
Yeah, the thing is for Owen Moore, he's just not using his ERS. Like, he's sat on 90%. He's got a good 30% more than King in front of him, and Aguado behind him. So Owen Moore just has the natural pace on these guys, but when he starts to use his ERS, that's when I think we're going to start to see him make that overtake on King and then try and pull away. Oh, big snap there from Owen Moore, and he could be actually now under a bit of pressure from Aguado, who could be looking at a move in towards turn 1 or into the final corner if he can stay close enough through the final sector. Let's have a look here. Can Aguado get a good run out of 15 on Owen Moore? In fact, no, he loses a bit of time, so Owen Moore gets away with that one, but just showing how easy it is just to have a snap of the cut and how things could change very quickly. Miguel close to the back of Peter Vol, potentially could look for a move. We got Aguado just dipping outside of the slipstream. Yano getting through on lifeboat for P7. So we are starting to see a split in the field. Of course, 7th downwards in the DRS train, and of course the top 6 in the DRS train.
Yeah, we saw it before with Aguado catching up and closing down a gap before the safety car came out. But Yano, he obviously will want to do that, but maybe save a little bit more of his ERS, as it's down to 1.3 seconds now, so seems to be working. He is using a little bit on the exit of some corners, and it's right on the edge of 1 second. He's desperately trying to get within that 1 second margin, but it's just not happening at the moment. He may have to use a little bit more. He does. He is
just about there now.
Just about on the edge, and now he just has to have it clean from here on out to get the DRS. But he's once again just outside, so he's using more. He's really draining his battery, and it looks like he is inside that 1 second margin. It's now Lifeboat who's just outside, and that is Owen Moore once again getting another 3-second time penalty.
Yeah, Owen Moore, that's his second 3-second time penalty of the evening, so that is a 6-second time penalty, which of course will drop him completely out of the points as it currently stands. So even though he's showing fantastic pace at the front, he could be walking away from this without picking up any points.
Yeah, just notice Burrell is about 7.5 seconds back from Jerome, so I'm not sure if he's had a little spin round somewhere. It's unfortunate for Burrell. Of course, his first race here in P6 as a reserve, I believe, and it's not quite going his way tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Burrell just not having the the rub of the green here in tonight's race. But yeah, Owen Moore, I mean, as I mentioned, like, he does have the pace to win this race, but I think he does need overtake King and then start to use his battery. Because if he can just like keep with these guys and match their pace, even when he's not using anything, and they are, imagine what you do when he starts using.
Yeah, he's just gonna have an overriding pace advantage on them, you'd think. And yeah, he's right on the back of King now, getting the slipstream. No ERS usage once again. Goes to the right hand side, has the inside of turn 1, and he gets the move done back into P1 for Owen Moore.
Yeah, absolutely. As Soapbox unable to get a move done on Tactician for P10. We're back up towards the front. The top 3 very close to each other, and it looks like Owen Moore pulling half a second on King already, and he's still not using any batteries. So this is just the natural pace of Owen Moore. Eventually, he's going to have to start using it because he needs to build up that 6-second gap.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it's going to be interesting to see when he does. Maybe with about 12 laps of racing left, he's just got to try and firstly get King out of the DRS range, and secondly just push like hell to get King out of that at least 6 seconds, which every lap goes past, it's going to be more and more difficult.
Well, I mean, here's the issue that Owen Moore is going to have now, is King will use a bit of his ERS to make sure he stays within that 1 second. And with DRS, he closes massively down the pit straight. So that's
noticed. Yeah, I just noticed Burrell had a little bit of a spin out of the last corner. But yeah, I was just mentioning before about Yano, how he was using his ERS to push. Well, he's actually just left Lifeboat in his wake about 1.6 seconds, 1.7 seconds behind him now.
Yeah, now we're going to see if Lifeboat can close back up. Obviously, Tactician about a second off the back of Lifeboat. In fact, the animal's made a mistake because look at that, Lifeboat's back on him.
Yeah, must have. I didn't catch what the mistake was, but yeah, that's bringing Lifeboat back into contention for a potential P7, which is going to be great for him. But Tactician is catching up to Lifeboat and his teammate Iano.
This is going to be so intriguing because Aguado effectively has so much more ERS compared to King. King is only staying with Owen Moore at the moment because of the DRS. Like, there's no other way for it. Like, if DRS was disabled, Owen Moore would be over a second clear right now. Like, massively. He pulls that gap to around about 8 tenths each lap, and obviously DRS brings King back into it. Aguado, the moment that he begins to start battling with King, that's going to allow Owen Moore to get away, and then he can really use his ERS to pull away.
Yeah, he needs to do that. And something I'm noticing between Owen Moore and Aguado, I think both of those have a much higher downforce setup. Because even with using no ERS and just the DRS for King, he's able to catch up to Owen Moore so fast. Like, even with the slipstream and the DRS, his closing speed is ridiculous on Owen Moore. So
yeah, and again,
that's how I think those two are set up.
The gap again is around about 8 tenths again as we go onto the DRS straight. Look how quickly this gap begins to close in between King and Owen Moore, and it is rapidly closing in. 6 tenths, 5 tenths, 4 tenths. Not close enough for a move, but I mean, Owen Moore, like, just on raw pace at the moment, seems to be around about half a second a lap quicker.
Yeah, it does seem that way. He's got to be in. Well, coming out the last corner, King was about 7 tenths off.
Just under
so
8 tenths it was.
He's got to. So you'd think, being 3 tenths behind by the first corner, he's got to be at least half a second, or 5 tenths behind to potentially get a move done into turn 1. But Owen Moore is just, he's handling the corners so well. He's just so consistent. Of course, he does have the time penalties, but his raw pace around here is unbelievable.
Yeah, and obviously the field is beginning to spread out a little bit, so he should finish in the points as it currently stands. Obviously, we'll have a little look at the gap to the leader now as we wait and see. So he is on the border of dropping behind Tactician currently with the 6 second time pen. But with Owen Moore and his pace, and look at this, Aguado's going to go for a move on King.
Oh, he goes defensive. There's Owen Moore 3 wide. Don't contact.
A little bit of contact between Aguado and Owen Moore there as they enter into turn 1. But King back up in front of Owen Moore.
Yeah, I'm just trying to check Aguado, and it doesn't look like he's got any front wing damage. But yeah, that was a big hit with the rear left tyre for Aguado there, and Jerome is the first person to pit onto a set of softs. That happened 2 laps ago, and Soapbox is just coming out of the pits for a set of softs. So those two opting not to.
Owen Moore makes a mistake. Look at Aguado trying to go side by side, but backs out of it.
Yeah, I caught that on my view, and it was really lucky from Owen Moore not to cause an incident between himself and Aguado. Now, it's getting around that time where the mediums aren't feeling that great, so we'll have to see if anyone decides to pit in. It doesn't look like anyone, apart from the bottom 2, are deciding to it in. So just Jerome and Soapbox at the moment opting for the softs. But there's Owen Moore closing up to King. He doesn't quite have the closing speed that King has.
Miguel in the background had a little peek.
He is starting to use a little bit more of his ERS though. It has dropped down to 80%. Maybe that's just the natural ERS usage. Not 100% sure. But yeah, the top 6 in a DRS train, you don't want to be, well, Miguel or Peter Vol or even Fleddy in this situation, because you're just not going to make any progress.
No, effectively, this is what Fleddy, Peter Vol and Miguel need. They need, what's called, maybe Owen Moore to get back through on King. And Aguado and King to battle it out just a little bit. And obviously that'll slow those two down, so they no longer have DRS on Owen Moore. And that gives them a better opportunity, and obviously that gives Fleddy a better chance of trying to get through on Aguado and King. But also then obviously for Peter and Miguel, they're going to need Fleddy to battle with those two as well to kind of cause that effect all over again. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Owen Moore on the back of King once again. As you mentioned, he's used a little bit of ERS. He's sat on 85%. DRS wide open as we run down in towards turn number 1. And this should be a job done from the Ferrari. And now it's all about, can he pull away? Because just naturally, he seems to have the pace. If he uses...
it definitely seems to be the case. And I think what Owen Moore is doing is saving it for the last lap, which is risky business because it's not guaranteed. And even with your penalty situation as he runs wide again, with his penalty situation, he's still going to be dropping down behind Lifebout. So that'll be, well actually, it will be behind Yano because Lifebout's got a penalty. But yeah, he's going to be dropping down to P7, so if he wants to try and keep the lead, he's got to really start pushing and using his ERS more.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, he also needs as well. He also needs King and Aguado to have a little bit of a scrap. Looks like Aguado just backing off slightly. He's trying to save up his battery as well. Of course, he's sat on 60%. Fleddy's on around about 50. Peter Vol and Miguel both on around about 25 to 30% each. As we got Lifeboat into the pit, so he's going to be jumping off those tyres. And it's going to be interesting to see where Lifeboat comes out relative to Jerome. How much of an undercut has Jerome got as King down the inside into turn 1. Job done on Owen Moore.
Yeah, this is not what Owen Moore needs. Especially with his penalty situation, he's just got to really push, try and keep the lead, but with King's straight line advantage, it's difficult to do that because he's able to keep about within 5-6 tenths behind Owen Moore. That just enables him to get a move done before turn 1. You see right. Peter Vol dropping, well, Peter Vol and Fleddy dropping a little bit further back from the front 3.
Interesting point here. So if these guys were to come into the pits right now, it would be quite close with Jerome for some of them, because Jerome's come out around about 4 seconds ahead of Lifeboat, who's just come into the pit. Remember, Lifeboat was battling with Yano. Yano's 1.8 seconds off the back of this fight.
Yeah, Jerome may find himself in a very good situation here, but the penalty situation, he's got 9 seconds of penalties. There's only 3 runners with penalties here. But back with Owen Moore, he's getting close, but not close enough to King to get a move done, so stays P2 for the time being. Going on board with Miguel, he was closing up to the back of Peter Vol, but stays in P6.
This will be an interesting battle for P11. Soapbox on softs and Lifeboat on a set of mediums. Fresh mediums, you'll have no issues getting to the end, but surely you'd want to be on softs at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe the only softs he had were a used set. So maybe that's why he opted for the mediums, or maybe it was a mistake. And that's another penalty for Lifeboat, so it makes it even harder. 6 seconds behind. Well, 6 seconds penalty and only half a second behind to Soapbox. So, as it stands, Lifeboat will be finishing 12th. Actually, yeah. Oh, it's close, actually. Jerome could easily finish 12th. It's only 3 seconds.
Remember, the Softs
well,
usually...
actually, Jerome will be... Yeah,
the Softs don't have a very long tyre life around you before they start dropping off. So I would expect Lifeboat to close up to Jerome. But, yeah, it's going to be intriguing. Owen Moore now, DRS closing up to King. Needs to get past and needs to start using his ERS to pull away now. He's running out of laps.
I'm not sure why maybe he's just saving it for the last lap, but when you've got the penalties that he has, he really needs to be using it even a little bit every lap to try and just pull away. And that's another penalty, 9 seconds now for Owen Moore. Yeah, so now he would be finishing... He'd be finishing behind, well, Tactician now. So he'll be down in 8th place. And that's Jerome, who's had a little bit of an incident through the exit of turn 2. So now he's dropped back behind Soapbox and Lifeboat.
Well, look at this, Aguado absolutely pushing King through these corners here. And Owen Moore looks like he's just broken that 1 second window. That's exactly what he needed.
Yeah, he is starting to use it a bit more. He is starting to use his ERS a bit more now.
Okay, so now Owen Moore with 3 laps to go, starting to use his ERS to try and pull away. He has a lot of work to do though, if he wants to try and take this win. It's going to be difficult for him, but this will allow Aguado and potentially Fleddy to scrap it out with King for P2, and that could just increase the gap between Owen Moore and King.
Effectively, this battle now for P2 is the battle for the race win.
Yeah, unless
so it's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting between even the top, well, from King down to Miguel, as that is Jerome retiring in the pit lane. Of course, now there's only Yano and Soapbox fighting for the last point position, actually.
Lifeboat.
Yeah, it's about a second away from finishing in the points. And the gap between King and Owen is still building and building. Aguado is really getting onto the back of King now. But Owen Moore's got 12 seconds of penalties now, so he's got a mountain to climb if he wants a race win. Dare I say, is pretty impossible from this point.
Yeah, I mean, from this stage, it's going to be difficult for him to get the race win. But if he builds up enough of a gap while these guys battle in behind, he can limit the number of points that he ends up losing with those time penalties. Here comes Aguado, perhaps. No, he's going to stick in behind, and that's going to be opening the door up to Fleddy, because Fleddy is right there, ready to take advantage. If Aguado's not going to go for a move, Fleddy probably will.
Yeah, definitely. And just looking at the gaps now from Owen Moore, he would be finishing 7th with the penalties he has. Of course, it is just under 11 seconds to Tactician, so if he can pull away another second from Tactician, he will bag himself a P6, as it's just about 11 seconds now, the gap from Owen Moore to Tactician.
Yeah, absolutely. And Owen Moore can try and pull himself ahead of a Tactician on the penalties he has. What he needs, though, like, to really limit all this now, he needs the last lap to be absolutely crazy with these guys behind, and they lose so much more time. Remember, fuel is another thing around this track. I mean, I haven't seen any red lights indicating they're under fuel at the moment, but I mean, fuel can definitely be a deciding factor, as here comes Aguado. He's going to use his battery and he's going to pull through to take the net race lead on King. And yeah, Aguado through and up into the net race lead as Peter Vol was under attack from Miguel as he had a little look at Fleddy there. In fact, Miguel gets the move done.
He's got a puncture! Peter Vol's got a puncture front right.
Oh, Peter Vol with a puncher, and honestly, that is now a big possibility for these guys. Are we going to see any more punchers here? We're on the final lap of the race. Owen Moore has just had absolutely brilliant pace, but it's the penalties that have let him down. And honestly, with this late on into the race, a puncher from Peter Vol has taken him out of a top 5 contention. Will anyone else get any last minute penalties? Owen Moore.
King's had a little bit of an incident there. He's dropped all the way back from Aguado.
Yep, Fleddy on the back of King now, and this could be a good run to the line between these two if he gets a good enough run out of the final corner. Now I'm going to go on board with Owen Moore because he is going to cross the line. He's going to take the race win on track, but he's going to lose it due to penalties. How many positions does he drop? Miguel picks up a 3-second time penalty as well. So Owen Moore will lose out. Aguado will take the win. King in second place. Fleddy in third. Miguel will come on in P4. And I believe Owen Moore will be fine in P5 as Tactician crosses the line. P6. P7 for Aiden. Lifeboat comes home in P8. I thought you might have got DNF before the line there. Yano will come home in P8 actually. Soapbox unable to jump Lifeboat in the end. So Lifeboat does get P9. Soapbox P10. And Heartbreak for the Aston Martin of Peter Vol. Look at that front right tyre.
He's got a rear left puncture as well.
Oh my god, both tyres are gone.
He's got a double puncture. His car's rocking about all over the place. Goes for a little spin, reverses across the line, and there we go. My god, I have never ever seen a double puncture in a league race.
That was something right there. Peter Vol will be absolutely... I don't think he's going to be kicking himself because you can never control when a punch is going to happen. But it's going to be one of those things. He's going to look back and think, "Oh, I wish I just took it a little bit easier on my tyres for a lap or two." But it is.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be kicking himself about that. Only a 1 stop for the majority of the finishers, with 2 stops for Yano, Lifeboat, and Soapbox. It's hard to take if you're Peter Vol, but you just gotta move. You gotta keep your head on the following race.
Yeah, and of course Aguado takes his first race win of the season. Remember, he had 2 second places in Brazil and Bahrain. Has taken the round 4 for the win, and he takes the championship lead with that win as well. Of course, second place is King, Fleddy in third, Miguel in fourth, Owen Moore, what could have been without the penalties, in P5, Tactician in P6, Aiden in P7, Yanel in P8, Lifeboat in P9, Soapbox rounding out the final point paying position in P10. And of course, Peter Vol, late puncher, late drama for him. What could happen? Now, non-finishers, Jerome, Burrell, Capara, Stretch, Aldo, and Chris. And of course, Jerome did pick up that fastest lap as well. And only just look how close it was between him and Lifeboat.
Yeah, it's very close for the fastest lap. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see how the rest of this season unfolds. Of course, next week I'll have to bring it up, I believe. Austria. Yeah, Austria. So another track where people are going to have a lot of practice at. Is a favoured track for most people, and you'd expect it's another track where qualifying times are going to be very close.
Yeah, absolutely. And Austria is going to be one of those tracks where, again, it's going to be like a good old DRS train. Obviously, 3 DRS zones at the circuit to really take advantage of the overtaking opportunities. But of course, that is going to bring an end to round number 4. I'm going to press you for your driver of the day.
I'd have to say, even with his penalties, I have to say Owen Moore. Just because of his qualifying performance, getting it on pole is just this race pace without even using ERS. Yes, for the penalties, it dropped him down to P5, but he showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of pace in this race here in Qatar, and is sending out a message to everyone else on the grid that he's got this pace, and they should be wary of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do agree to a point, but obviously I can't ignore the 12-second of time penalty. So, what's called with that, I will give the driver of the day to our race winner, Aguado, because obviously coming up from P8 to take the win, no penalties for him, made the move where it mattered on King on the final lap, and was able to pull away. So I'm going to give it to Aguado, driver of the day. Of course, that is going to bring an end to round number 4 here at Qatar in F6 on the PlayStation platform here in PSGL. Once again, massive shout out to our sponsors, GTO Mega. Of course, if you go on to GTO Mega on the site, at the checkout, use code PSGL for a lovely little discount. But yeah, that is going to bring an end to the racing action this week in F6. Next week we'll go to round number 5 at the Austrian Grand Prix. I have been Ivorbrin Mike, he has been RDR Quinn, and until next week guys, good night.
See you.